So you will have men nowadays, for example, who say, I want a woman like my grandma. You might want a woman like your grandma, but you don't want to be a man like your grandpa.
Oh, wait a minute.
Right?
Don't let me run.
We don't know how to work through relationships. We don't know how to show up vulnerably. We don't even want to show up vulnerably.
Yeah.
But I want you to give me an experience, not recognizing it's my job to give myself that experience and choose somebody who wants the same experience as me.
Yeah.
So many of us are walking around for decades unwell, but we don't know it. And then we think it's our personality.
Child,
Right.
Doc, I did not realize the things that I was using as a coping mechanism
girl.
that I
Yeah.
didn't think were coping, right?
yeah.
Weed, the alcohol.
Getting the hair done, getting the nails done, the constantly being in other people's business. We don't recognize that we are constantly figuring out ways to survive. Sometimes it's in pursuit of wellness, but other times it's just in pursuit of relief.
Ooh,
We're emotional surgeons. That's what we do. We are
Ooh, good.
emotional doctors. Everything is tied to your mental health,
Yeah.
back problems,
Yeah.
heart palpitations. So oftentimes the things that people are going to the doctor for, they don't recognize that they should be going to a mental health specialist or
Ooh.
professional for.
ooh, that's good. Welcome to Vault Empowers Talk. So we don't just scratch the surface. We dive deep into the lives of the world's most influential change makers. I'm your host, Brandy Harvey. But before I introduce my guest for the day, I need you to go ahead and do me a favor. I need you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss your daily dose of inspiration and motivation. But without further ado, I had to interview before the interview, y'all. I'm excited for this one. Dr. Spirit is a national board certified counselor, licensed professional counselor, certified child custody evaluator, and a certified forensic mental health evaluator. Dr. Spirit specializes in treating life's everyday problems, relationship issues, depression, unresolved childhood issues, intergenerational trauma, and increasing self-awareness. In addition to working with clients in her private practice, Dr. Spirit is also a motivational speaker, workshop facilitator, mental health advocate, and media personality. Dr. Spirit has been featured on the OWN Network reality series Love Goals, Dr. Phil, The Steve Harvey Show, Divorce Court, The Ricky Smiley Morning Show, and the popular podcast Therapy for Black Girls. Dr. Spirit believes good vibes are meant to be shared. Vault Empowers Talks welcome global mental health leader, TV and radio host, wife, and mother, Dr. Spirit, to the show.
Girl, I'm just going to take you with me everywhere. I'll just be like, let her announce me because I can't. Wow.
It's so good to have you.
It's so good to be here.
Listen,
Thank
we've
you.
touched on all the things before the camera started.
That's what
Listen,
we do.
we didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about relationships.
I like to talk about it
We
all.
didn't talk about family, children. We've talked about it all.
Yes.
But this is nothing new to you because your mother said that this career chose you.
Oh, yeah.
She pointed this out when you were in college.
Yeah, because I was struggling. I originally in my undergrad started out as a pre-med biology major. I thought my entire life I wanted to be an OBGYN.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like my sophomore year I was struggling because I was like, this blood thing, this cadaver thing coming is just not for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to disappoint anybody because I always said I want to be a doctor. And so I was kind of at that crossroads, and it just so happened, because that's how divinity works,
Yeah.
that I was at that crossroads while I was sitting in an elective that was Intro to Psych 101.
Oh, wow.
And it was the one class that I didn't have to study for. It came absolutely natural to me. And the professor was a doctor. Okay, so I go to him one day after class because I'm struggling and I got to figure this out. And I wanted to know. I said, I'll never forget Dr. Newbold. He hated us because undergrads, he just did not have time for us. So I said to him, I said, Dr. Newbold, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah, what's up? Right, with the grunt. And he said, I said, are you a doctor? Like, do you work in the hospital when you're not here? And he looked at me, he was like, Spirit, what are you asking me? And I said, well, you're a doctor, but you're here with us. So like, do you work here and then you go to the hospital? And he said, Spirit, you are too smart to be this dumb. Like literally, that's what he said. And I was like, whoa, don't come for me, doc. I was like, listen, I'm the proverbial first kid in my family to go to a 4-year college and all of that. And he was like, that's no excuse. That's no excuse for ignorance. Like he just had no patience for it. So he said, I'm going to tell you this and then you're going to figure the rest out. He said, I am not an MD. I am a PhD. I did not go to medical school. I went to graduate school. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this graduate school thing that you talk about?
Wow.
He said, you have got to be kidding me. Goodbye, leave. And at that point, I really did not know what graduate school was because my heart was set on medical school since the age of
Wow.
8. I spent time in hospitals. That is what I thought I was going to do. Girl, I went back to the dorm and looked up graduate school and realized it was books and not cadavers.
Yeah.
I was, sign me up.
Yeah,
Sign me
yeah.
up. So long story short, I called home. I called my mom and I was like, I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'm going to be a therapist.
Yeah.
And she said, I know. I said, well, if you knew, why didn't you tell me?
Why am I the last to know?
Yes, because, girl, I
Yeah.
had struggled.
Yeah.
Literally, they had signed me up in high school to become a phlebotomist, so I was drawing blood, passing out left and right, but still
Wow.
being able to, like, get the certifications.
Wow.
Me and blood, we really don't get along. That's a whole nother story. But she said, you know, long story short, she was like, Spirit, you've been doing this your whole life. I had literally started out as a peer counselor in the first grade. I was selected
Wow.
among 9 other students. We were trained on everything from suicidality to divorce, you name it. We really went through some serious trainings. And I was a peer counselor for all of my elementary school years. Got to middle school, we didn't have a peer counseling program. I worked with an advisor to start one. Got to high school, same thing.
Yeah.
And I just really thought that this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to check on each other. We're supposed to make sure that
Yeah.
if somebody's in
Yeah.
trouble, we notice and we have the
Yeah.
conversations. So when my mother said, you've been doing this your whole life, it was like air to me. It was second nature, but I never knew that that was going to be my calling. And many years later, when somebody told me God does not call the qualified, God qualifies the called.
Yeah.
And that was like,
Yeah.
so all of this has been by design.
Yeah.
Well, let's go. This is my
Yeah.
assignment.
I mean, when I was doing my research on you, and the stats are like, I mean, they're really jarring
Yeah.
because 4% of clinicians are Black,
Yeah.
and Black women out
4%. Like we have to really
Yeah,
think about
4%
that. In the
of
whole country,
clinicians
in the whole United States.
are Black.
Yeah.
And Black women
Yeah.
outnumber Black men
Yeah.
therapists 6-1.
Yeah.
And so really, it's like almost like a clarion call why it's so important for us to step into this field.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at different places, sometimes I forget, right? I've been in Atlanta since college.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the Mecca. The South is where we
it's
are.
Wakanda.
Yeah. Forever.
It confuses us when we go to other places.
Yeah, so sometimes I get it twisted. So when I have people from other parts of the country who will contact me and they'll say, Doc, I'm looking for somebody in California, which is my state that I'm originally from, or I'm looking for somebody in, Utah or Wisconsin. That's going to be a lot harder to find somebody, a person of color, period. Forget
Yeah.
Black, but
Yeah.
a person of color, period, that not only is licensed in your state, but is also accepting clients.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important for us not to just talk about what it means to have someone that looks like you. It's most important for you to have somebody that understands your story and can go on the journey with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as clinicians of color, it becomes really important for us to hold our white colleagues accountable, because if they represent 86% of the profession, then they really need to understand other individuals that don't necessarily
Yeah.
look like
Yeah.
them or come from communities
Yeah.
that they can relate to.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important because the stats are real.
Oh, yeah.
By 2030, the mental health illness will make up 18% of the
Yes.
disease burden in the world.
Total. So we
In
have
the
to
world.
understand what that means.
Yeah.
And we're estimating that just entails largely anxiety and depression. So what that means is globally, no matter where you go in the world, and in some countries it's higher. I
Yeah.
go to a lot of different places, and we're seeing it as high as 35%
Wow.
in some countries,
Wow.
especially where there's civil unrest and huge effects of climate change. But what we're saying is 20% of all diseases within the next 6 years will encompass a mental health condition.
Yeah.
And that is roughly, because a lot of people say, well, then I don't care about that. The folks that are in power, what does that mean to me? That means $6 trillion lost in the global economy.
Yeah.
6 trillion. So if you don't care about anything else, care about your dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's really that serious.
When we look at mental health, and I really want to start here because, excuse me, so much of what you said is like our whole life is centered around our mental health.
Absolutely.
It's from the moment we wake up
Come on.
to the moment we go to sleep,
Come
and
on.
even the quality of sleep that we get.
That part. even the quality of sleep in between, everything is tied to your mental health, including your physical health.
Yeah.
And so often we want to talk about them as separate things, but we don't recognize that your mental health literally has physical manifestations in your body and vice versa. So oftentimes the things that people are going to the doctor for, they don't recognize that they should be going to a mental health specialist or professional for. And so they actually get offended when the doctor says, well, have you gone to therapy? Have you seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Because what they hear is they're crazy, right? What they don't hear is brain health. So if I told you to go to a cardiologist, you'd rush to make the appointment. If I told you to go to orthopedic specialist, you'd rush to make that appointment. But if I tell you to go to a behavioral health specialist, you're like, now hold on, doc. I don't know what it is that you're trying to say. Right? But you don't recognize that things like insomnia, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, ongoing tonsillitis and throat problems, back problems, heart palpitations, night sweats, can't sleep at night, racing thoughts, can't focus, lethargy, or like I'm just totally unmotivated, I'm exhausted all the time, weight gain or weight loss. Like you think about these things and you want to go to a physical doctor, but you don't recognize that mental health conditions have these symptoms too.
Ooh, okay, doc, because what
It's scary, right?
You
We
know
don't
my
know
wheels
that.
are turning because it's real, because I know that everything, it has a spiritual connotation to it.
Come on.
Like everything is like manifesting in the spirit realm when it manifests in the body, right? The body keeps a score though.
Constantly.
Right?
And I will tell folks though, because not everybody believes in spirituality, but I tell atheists and agnostics, you have mental health too, right? We all have mental health, but what we don't all have is mental wellness. And if you are not constantly working on your wellness, then the world is taxing you. The spiritual world is taxing you. The daily world is taxing you. To be human and to be alive is in a constant state of survival, right? Which means that every day is stressful. Just your heart pumping all the blood in your body, just the air going in and out of your lungs, that is stressful, and it takes a toll on your mental wellness.
You talk about some of the hard truths that we really have to face in order to really get the best life that we deserve and desire.
Yes.
So when we look at how our physical body is being affected by our mental health, we look at how our relationships are affected. What are some of those hard truths that really we need to examine so we can show up as our best selves?
I would say the number one thing is acknowledge that you have trauma in your body, right? Because to be human means that you have experienced wounds. And people don't understand the effects of emotional wounds in the same way we understand physical wounds. So if I punched you in your gut and I punched you hard enough to leave a bruise, you would look at that and go, oh my gosh, so I'm bleeding here, the tissue is hurt, it's going to take some time to heal. But we don't recognize that emotional wounds pack the same punch, right? We don't recognize that the things that we experienced in our childhood are traumatic, and we carry those for decades, right? Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, is what we call
the ACE
them,
study,
right?
1990.
Come on, ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences. Things like child neglect, abandonment, poverty, racism, divorce of parents, sexual abuse, physical abuse, bullying, learning disabilities that never get diagnosed. So ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, processing disorders, all of these things that we experience in childhood, grief by death of grandparents, right? We carry these things with us. 50% of all mental illness develops before the age of 14.
Wow.
Hello? 50% of all mental illness develops before the age of 14.
Wow.
75% before the age of 24.
Wow.
And if we're lucky enough, if we're lucky enough to see somebody in our office, it's usually estimated in the United States alone to be 11 years after they've developed symptoms related to mental health conditions. So many of us are walking around for decades unwell, but we don't know it, and then we think it's our personality.
Child,
right?
Doc,
Come on.
I'm about to get on the couch. I'm about to get on.
We think that quiet person is quiet. They think that they're quiet. They don't realize that it's chronic depression or dysthymia. We think that anxiety and just being like worked up and just short tempered and irritable all the time or wide open to like every stimulus is something, it's just we've been that way for so long, we don't recognize that that's an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
So much about our unrest and our discomfort and our dis-ease, we don't recognize are symptoms of illness that could be treated, and we don't have to live the way that we live, but we've just gotten used to the lack of peace.
Ooh, yeah.
We've gotten used to the lack of comfort. We've gotten used to the irritability. We've gotten used to the sadness.
Yeah.
We've gotten used to the withdrawal and the loneliness. We've gotten used to taking the edibles. We've gotten used to taking the melatonin. We've gotten used to taking the caffeine. We've gotten used to taking the you name it. Right. There's the list just goes on, and we don't see that as self-medicating behavior. We don't see that we are prescribing for ourselves instead of going to doctors to actually precision medicate us and to get us well.
That's so good, because it's the coping mechanism.
Oh, absolutely.
I did not, until I got in therapy, I did not realize the things that I was using as a coping mechanism that I didn't think were coping, right?
Oh, yes.
Now, I knew that the weed, the alcohol, drinking a bottle of wine at night, laying on the couch, okay, that might be a little bit of a problem, but okay, maybe not. But the shopping.
The fast cars,
yes,
the handbags,
yes,
the red bottoms,
yes,
the sex, the online gaming,
yes,
the getting the hair done, getting the nails done, the constantly being in other people's business, all the things that we do to distract ourselves, the eating, the gifting for people, the having to just be constantly consumed and distracted so we don't have to deal with ourselves. We don't recognize that we are constantly figuring out ways to survive.
Yeah.
Every time we hit the ground running, we are trying to figure out how to survive. Yeah. Sometimes it's in pursuit of wellness, but other times it's just in pursuit of relief.
Ooh, that's good.
That's it.
In pursuit of relief.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly, because the body craves relief. The body craves contentment. The body craves peace. So it's going to constantly be trying to figure out how to soothe. What is going to make me feel better now? Oh, I don't want to think about that. What is going to make me feel better now? Ooh, that feels so good in my mouth. What is going to make me feel better? Ooh, that bag looks so good. I got to have it. And it's just a constant cycle of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I think that it took me to 33 to get into therapy. It was a good age. But here's the thing, that to your point, you said most mental illness happens by 14.
Yes.
And then by 24.
Come on.
And when I got out of college, I was 22 years old. I was standing in the room at my dad's house in LA. I first moved out to LA, and I said, I need therapy. And he said, Black people don't have time for therapy.
Oh, I know. He told me that when I was on his show, girl.
Get over it. Get over it. And I was like, so my little 22-year-old mind said, okay, I need to just get over it.
Yes.
And it took me another 10 years to realize that I'm kicking that can.
Come on. So think about it. So you heard me say 11 years.
Yeah.
You're standing in his living room at 22.
22.
So it's already there, right? So you had to recognize I need something. There we go at 34, 12 years at 33. So 13 years, right? So maybe a year or two before that, it's kicking in. Statistically, you walked into the door right where we typically see people.
Yeah. Walked in there. And I'm so glad that I did.
Yes.
Because of course it changed the trajectory of my life.
Come on.
Right?
Come on.
It helped me break some stuff, unlearn some stuff, uproot some stuff. Okay. Because it was a whole lot of stuff that need to come up out. Dig it out.
Come out the roots, because that's that intergenerational trauma. Those roots, it's like oak trees, those mighty oaks.
Yeah.
But I love to tell clients when they hit my door, I want you to get excited, because if you get this healing now, like if you really do the work, the rest of your life is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
So in your 30s, you're thinking, I'm so old. I can't believe I'm dealing with this now.
Yeah.
I'm like, child, you got 7, 8 good decades if you do this the right way. Come on and get this.
I'm telling you, it literally changed the way the decade of my 30s ended and how I was able to walk into my 40s.
Yes.
And you talk about this. Healing is so important that it will change the neural pathways in your brain when you heal.
Yes, because trauma traumatizes the brain, it injures the brain, it inhibits development, it changes the chemistry of the brain, but so does healing. And so there are certain pathways that get damaged through
Yeah.
the trauma that we
Yeah.
experience. So oftentimes, one of the biggest frustrations that people have when they go to therapy and they're doing the healing work, not just the problem solving of the small everyday things, but when they really are doing the work, they want it to happen faster. They're like, why? I should be over this already. I should have learned that lesson. I shouldn't have had that mistake. And it's like, well, slow down, because you need your brain to do the work, right? I like to explain like emotional wellness, like kind of on the same scale as physical wellness, because we can understand that. So I tell folks, like, imagine that you break a bone and you go get a cast, right? The cast is not what's healing you. The cast is literally just holding the bone in place so that the body can heal itself. Therapy is much like that. This is the cast. This is where I'm holding you. This is the container that we're allowing you to be still in so that your body can repair itself. It can blaze new neural pathways. It can have new understanding. It's like putting on glasses for the first time and seeing in HD, right? It literally changes how you see the world. It literally changes how you think. It literally heals parts of your body where the trauma is stored. People don't understand. They're like, I've had irritable bowel syndrome forever. I've had high blood pressure forever. I'm not doing anything different but going to therapy. And I'm like, child, you're doing everything different then. Because what you do in one place is what you do in all the rest. You are literally doing things that are promoting wellness in your entire body. In your entire body.
I love this conversation. It gets me all excited because one of the things that, you know, when you talk about you get to see the world differently.
Yes.
You get to have a different lens on the world, but you get different choices because most of the time, you said we won't allow ourselves to sit in the loneliness. We won't allow ourselves to sit in the loneliness and the discomfort. And so then we invite in these relationships because we won't allow ourselves to sit.
Yeah, because it becomes, this is too uncomfortable. We haven't learned how to manage pain. And so one of the things that therapy will teach you is how to redistribute your pain, how to be able to put things down and pick things up so that it feels manageable instead of carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders all at one time, which, by the way, is where a lot of people center that weight and your muscles actually get tight. The lactic acid builds up across your neck and your back. But it's like sitting there sometimes means I have to think. I have to feel. I have to reconnect back to the parts of my body that at certain points I learned how to shut off. I learned how to turn off. Most people don't even realize they don't have access to the full range of their emotions. They can feel just a few of them, or they got to feel really intense. So I can feel things like anger. I can feel things like surprise or shock or joy, but I can't feel things like just happiness. I can't feel calm. I can't feel just a little melancholy. It's like if it's not extreme on one end or the other, I can't feel it. And it's because we're so desensitized to our emotions because there was a point in our lives where we needed that. I needed to survive painful places and spaces. I didn't have any other coping strategies. So either I had to disconnect in my body and stay physically present, or I had to learn how to withdraw and run and then sit in that loneliness. And then when that became too uncomfortable, I would just take anything I can get. So for some people, chaos is self-medicating, right? Because then I can keep spinning. I don't have to sit and feel everything that I'm really carrying in my body.
So it can look like chaos, but it can also look like overeating.
Oh,
right?
yes.
It can look like the weight gain.
Oh, yes.
Because even with your numbers saying that by 2030, we're looking at mental health, I know for a fact, cardiologist Dr. Kim Williams said that by the year 2050, Black Americans will no longer be here. 40% of African Americans will no longer be here due to chronic disease. And so that is a lifestyle. Right? That's what's going in our mouths.
And what we talk about constantly is that the number one thing that we can do in pursuit of wellness is literally exercise. And it doesn't even have to be the hardcore. If you walk for 20 minutes every day, you're staving off the likelihood for diseases like dementia, right? Just by walking. And what we don't realize is there's a difference between like getting on a treadmill for 20 minutes and actually just walking outside
nature
to let your body process all of the change in your environment that actually makes your brain think and process and filter and do all the different things. But literally, it's just the sedentary lifestyle. It's us being poisoned by the foods that we're eating. Even a lot of the stuff that we think is healthy, when you really read the labels, or the stuff that the industries keep off the labels, we're poisoning ourselves. Our microbiomes are just consumed with all of the wrong things and none of the right things. And so if we really don't recognize that our food is medicine or our food is poison, and then all of the other stressors that we're carrying constantly, I mean, our bodies are just literally full and puffed up of just cortisol and other stress hormones, and then you pile in the wrong foods, and all of a sudden, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, it just, the outcomes, they're not good, not for any of us, but especially Black folks.
Yeah. And then we then make the decision that therapy is not for us.
Well,
right?
you know, there was a time, and I like to say this because I think it's important in terms of accountability to our profession, right? That there was a time when therapy was not for us. Hell, the founders of this profession, right, literally said that Black people did not have the physiological makeup, the brain development to even have a mental health condition. We weren't smart enough, and we didn't have problems. That mental health conditions literally were for white landowners because they had real stress. They had real issues. And then when they finally did recognize that we had mental health conditions, the first one that they diagnosed us with was something called drapetomania. And that was for enslaved persons who tried to escape enslavement. And they said, surely you must be crazy to want to leave this lifestyle. Oh, it gets worse. The cure for it, cut off a toe, toe by toe, until you get the life back in you, until you can conform. If you have somebody who has what we now know was depression, right? So for the longest time, this was not for us. But think about the stressors of just Black folks who were enslaved back then. Okay, forget post-traumatic stress disorder. We were dealing with it actively. Depression, anxiety, and we won't even talk about things like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. These things have been here since the beginning of time, but we haven't been diagnosed with them. So the things that we were having to survive with no treatment, no care, and then we won't even get into the racism. You get into the 60s with like protest psychosis, where they literally were diagnosing Black men with paranoia, paranoid schizophrenia for protesting for their civil rights, and were lobotomizing us, were drugging us and institutionalizing us.
That was like,
it's serious.
Because that book, Medical Apartheid,
oh girl,
like it gives you, it just,
I see you. Come on, well studied. I love this.
Harriet Washington, I think it's Harriet Washington who wrote that book, Medical Apartheid. But it talks about that. I mean, even Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about it in post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Absolutely.
Hyperly vigilant, you know, all the time. We're always on edge. We're always in this like hypervigilant state because of the amount of stress that has been we're carrying in our DNA.
So now think about that with no treatment. Think about then the actual histories that have been passed down to us orally, written. Think about us watching our grandparents, great-grandparents, our actual parents who have raised us. So we have traumatized individuals with mental health conditions who are then trying to parent, right, when they weren't well parented, who had to survive systems that are still trying to kill them. Think about what lives in our DNA, and then think about the civil unrest now that is being activated within us. So then when they constantly think, oh, y'all are crazy. No, we're not crazy, right? When they say, well, we tried to tell you, right? Black folks tried to tell you. It is this intuitive knowing, and when we get into epigenetics and some of the other really consequential things that teach us what lives in us, the knowing to be hypervigilant, the knowing to be aware of your surroundings, the understanding of socio-political culture and how that heightens that hypervigilance, and the toll that that takes on our mental health, just as we try to parent, just as we try to go to work, just as we try to love each other, just as we try to show up in community for each other. We are traumatized traumatized, hypervigilant people who need care probably more than anybody else. And then that is why our physical health data is showing us where our mental health is failing us.
Ooh, that is
right?
good. I
That
want to
is
stand
it.
up and clap. Listen, that's a point.
Come on.
Okay.
I need us to make the
Yeah,
connection because
it
we
is.
still won't go and relieve ourselves. We still won't cry out. We still don't even understand the power of crying. Hell, we got people that will not shed actual tears, right? Who refuse to
Doc.
cry. Like the thing that kills me on my timeline is when people go, "Who's cutting onions in here?"
Yeah.
And it took me a second to even recognize for the culture that they I was like, "Cry? So
Yeah.
you won't admit to crying?"
Doc, I spoke at an event. This was 2 years ago. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I haven't cried in 4 years.
Yes. Yes.
She said, this is the first time I've cried in 4 years.
Come on.
She was like, and the fact that you gave me that release, I literally was in, who ain't cried? I just cried last week.
So many. No, sis, because we take it as weakness,
Yeah.
right? And so many of us have heard as a function of our survival,
Yeah.
don't let them see you cry,
Yeah.
right? To let them see you cry taught us culturally that they were affecting us.
Yeah.
So whether it was during segregation and don't let them see you cry while the schools are being integrated, don't let them see you cry while they're whipping your husband or selling your children.
Yeah.
Don't let them see you cry as
Yeah.
you are birthing
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that they realize that you have value for,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's
Yeah.
an actual life or something that you're creating. We have been taught that that is a symbol of your vulnerability, and you don't give anybody that. Hell, we won't even cry with our partners. We won't
Yeah.
even cry with ourselves
Yeah.
to acknowledge how much we care about things, right?
Yeah.
But really, if you ever had the opportunity to take even a single tear and put it under a microscope, you could see the stress hormones that are in there. You could see, oh, yes, crying is your body's way of naturally relieving itself. When you cry, your muscles constrict,
Yeah,
you push oxygen in and out of your body. There's a whole process. It's meant to be a part of natural healing that you don't have to reach for anything in order to make yourself feel better. And we've removed even that coping strategy from ourselves,
yeah.
further driving up blood pressure, further driving up lack of oxygen to really facilitate what needs to happen in our organs. We are dying because we will not access our full range of healing. And these are ancestral ways of healing. And we've just lost all of it by design.
Yeah.
By design.
That is so good.
Yeah.
This is like my favorite conversation. You know, you say we've lost this, right?
Yes.
So then what are the steps that we can take to start to regain this so that we can really start to love each other and create these healthy relationships and these healthy home environments?
Yeah, well, it really gets into individual healing. You can only love to the depths that you really love yourself.
Yeah.
Really and truly, because there are places and spaces that we can't go to. And a lot of people hate to hear that. I recently had a conversation about the importance of mothers being happy and the joy of that and the necessity of that. And I had a ton of women who were like, oh, great, just put one more thing on mothers, because now if I'm not happy, then now that affects my children. Wow, just thanks a lot. And it was like, well, think about what you're saying. 86% of women are the primary caregiver. So how can you, from a depressed state, raise a happy child and think that your child won't be affected? How can the father who is in the home and the quality of your relationship not impact how you then show up with the children that you're raising? And I had men go, what do you mean we're not the number one thing? This is ridiculous. I don't want to hear about the happiness of women. And we go, well, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe we're so disconnected, we don't see our interconnectedness. We don't see how we're constantly not just brushing up against each other, but crashing against each other, constantly wounding each other. But we also don't recognize that we are the answer to each other's healing, right? If I can heal myself, if I can stop and take stock of what my wounds are, if I can get in front of somebody that can help me heal, how I show up in my healed space, in my healing space, I can make space for your healing too.
Yeah.
I can have empathy for you. I
Yeah.
can have grace for you. I
Yeah.
can model that for you. I
Yeah.
can create that environment for you. And all of a sudden, then we're creating something different in our home. And when each of us go out, that is what we are emitting. That's what we're modeling. That's what we're creating. And that is what happens in community,
Yeah.
right? We get sick in community, but we can also heal in community. So it's like, how do we get very intentional about our wellness? Because that's the one thing that they never wanted us to have. It was, what's the bare minimum I got to give you in order to keep you alive so you will produce for me? And that's still where we are even today in this capitalistic society. It's how many breadcrumbs do I have to give you to keep you coming back here in order to just produce? And that's why even when we look at corporate wellness, right, the absenteeism, the lack of productivity, they don't even recognize that if you were to invest in the wellness of your employees, the return on investment is roughly $4 for every dollar spent.
Wow.
Right. And so we have to look at how all of this is interconnected. Mental wellness is at the heart of everything. It's at the heart of our very humanity.
Yeah.
It's at the heart of the way that we're even engaging in the world.
Yeah.
So until we reconnect and plug back into that for self, we're never going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're never going to be okay.
There's somebody listening who is probably going to say, I don't have the money to do that. They're going to say, my insurance don't cover. I don't have insurance.
There we go.
You know, I don't have the money. So then how do I take the steps to get well?
Well, I love to say never let the money be the reason that you do not seek mental health care, because there is always a way to get access to services, whether it is pro bono or slide and fee scale services. And I love to brag because we take a lot of pride in this, and I just like to use us as the example. But every clinician that works in my office always has at least 2 slots that they give for pro bono services, right? And yes, granted, those slots stay full and there's always a waiting list, but we are just one organization. Pro bono services exist everywhere. You have slide and fee scale services within your community. You can call therapists to say, hey, listen, I know that this is your rate, but would you be willing to see me at a reduced rate, right? Getting access to insurance, looking at your employee assistance program. So many people have mental health benefits in different places and spaces, and they don't even know it, and employers love it because they don't have to spend the money, right? You have employer assistance programs at every job that will not only see you, but every member in your house for a certain number of sessions, and people don't know. Your insurance will allow you to do that. And all over the world, I will tell you, there are tons of things that may not necessarily be therapy, but are therapeutic. There are ways that you can access care. There are ways that you can begin to understand your trauma. There are ways that you can begin to understand your mental wellness. And if you don't do anything else, take the time to visit your primary care provider and ask them, hey, doc, while we're here, this is my preventative care. This is my annual visit. Can you do a depression screener on me? Can you do an anxiety screener on me? Can you make sure that I'm good? And sometimes it's as little, I kid you not, as little as 2 questions can tell us whether you may have a clinical diagnosis for anxiety or depression.
What are those 2 questions?
Well, they are literally on what's called a PHQ. It's a screener. So there are anxiety and depression screeners. And if you want to, I can grab a laptop and actually pull up those 2 questions. I won't ask them of you, but I will literally give those to your audience.
Okay.
Hopefully there's not a
We'll drop them in the
licensing
show
thing that we can
notes.
do. Yeah.
We'll drop them in the show notes.
Yeah.
And that's something that people can think about
Yeah.
as they watch the interview. You said recognizing your trauma.
Yes.
And so how can the listening audience start to kind of pick up on some of the cues that may be some of those traumatized, whether they're big traumas or little traumas?
Well, I think the thing is we just all have to recognize that there are things that have happened in our lives that have caused us to be angry, caused us to be sad, caused us to be depressed at different points. We carry grief, we carry shame, we carry resentment, we carry emotions. And I tell my clients, you don't have to diagnose yourself. It's not your job to figure out whether or not you are well.
Yeah.
It's your job to deliver yourself to a professional who can assess your wellness. And so all you have to know is you are human and you have survived, and you've never gotten in front of a professional to be able to work out everything that it's taken you to survive to this moment. So how do you get yourself in a place that is safe, that is caring, that is connected, that allows you to just unpack it?
Yeah.
And every therapist does it different. Every therapist sees the work different. I love to tell folks how it kind of works for me as I see people almost like puzzles. And people will come to me holding all of the pieces of the puzzle that is their entire life. And some people, everybody's bag is different. Some people will come with no bag and they're holding all the pieces in their hands. Some people will come with a sandwich bag. Some people, child, will come with a garbage bag. Some will come with a Gucci bag or a Prada bag, or, any
Somebody
other
cute
gym
bag lady by Erykah Badu.
Come on, but we all got one, right? And every time we sit down, you will take out different pieces of your life.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a very organic process. And as you take out those pieces, they begin to take shape. And we can look at that and go, oh, that's a river. Okay, I got you. Oh, and that's a mountain. Okay, and that's a tree. Now, wait a minute. You put that piece there, and that looks like it goes there. But if you really look, that's actually backwards. And so if we flip it, now that's not a piece that goes there. That actually goes there. But that was a story you were telling yourself about that. And when we move it and put it in its proper context, how does it change not just that part of your picture, but this one as well? And how do you allow somebody to connect all the pieces of their lives, recognizing that their picture is not just their story, but the story of everybody who came before them and those who are coming after? And when you can create a safe space for people to look at their entire story, even the parts that are scary to look at, even the parts that are anxiety provoking to look at, even the parts that are frustrating or devastating to look at, and you can allow them the space to look at it and hold them up and affirm them and support them and let them know that reality is just information. How do we empower you to create the life that you want for yourself, given the reality of your story? That nothing about where you've come from prohibits you from the life you desire. That nothing about how you're showing up right now prohibits you from having what you want. If you can understand your pieces and pull and create the right next ones, it changes everything.
You are the mother of 7.
Yes.
You are a wife.
Yes.
You've been married for a number of years.
Oh, yeah. We've been together now. We were laughing the other day. We thought about it like, how long have we been together? Because we don't really count. We just enjoy.
Oh, that's good.
It's literally been a little over 20 years now.
Oh, wow. Because there's some folks out there counting.
I know.
They've been
it stays the Google search, girl.
They've been sentenced. Okay, some people out here, Dr. Spirit, they've been sentenced, so they counting the time that they've been together. So I have to wonder, with 7 children, were you always showing up psychoanalyzing your children?
No, because I know that that's not my job, and I know that I can't do that and do it well because I'm a part of their story and they're a part of mine. So I don't have the objectivity to. One of the things that I have always done, though, and they all inevitably roll their eyes and go, oh gosh, no, like I'm on deck, is that I've always thought that they all need a therapist at a particular point in time. So inevitably, when I see things and I go, now would be a really good time for you. No, I don't want to go to therapy.
Really?
Yes. And then, inevitably, when they get to a certain point, they go, oh, yeah, that was okay. I get it.
So
now.
At what age did you start to, was it like middle school, high school?
No, elementary school. Again, remember, mental health, 50% before the age of 14. So for me, it is about recognizing devastating trauma and recognizing that children don't have the same capacity as adults. So the things that you may take as like no big deal are life-changing for them. So you changing your work schedule can be traumatic to your child. If they were used to you being there every time they got off the bus, and now all of a sudden you don't get home until aftercare and they got an hour with you and that's bath time, dinner, homework, and go to bed, that can be traumatizing to a child. changing schools, their best friend moving away, their
Yeah.
best friend's parents going through divorce, you going through divorce, you and your husband fighting in the wee hours of the night when you don't think that they hear you and they've heard every single word, them being worried about whether or not we're financially okay. Is my mommy okay? She's sad and stressed all the time. Grandma just passed away. Mom broke up with the boyfriend that I actually liked, and nobody stopped to ask me, am I okay? And now I can't talk about him, and nobody else talks about him unless they're talking about him bad. Now, who is this new guy? Why is my dad never coming around? Why am I not enough to make my parents stay together? Why does my teacher talk to me like I'm crazy? Why do the kids not like me? Why is this math class so difficult for me? We moved, my grocery store is gone. My home is gone. My drive and what I know how to get to grandma's house is gone. Grandma doesn't live there anymore. That neighborhood is gone. Everything is constantly changing. Someone sexually assaulted me and nobody will talk about it.
Yeah.
Worse, mom knows what's happening to me and mom is choosing dad or mom is choosing the boyfriend. Mom is blaming me for her boyfriend looking at me inappropriately.
Yeah.
All of the things that we don't allow children to talk about. All of those things that they carry, that they hold,
Yeah.
that we don't want to talk to them about because nobody talked about it with us.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about it because we don't know how to ask the questions. We don't want to talk about it because we're not ready to deal with it on top of all of the other things we're dealing with. And then we have children who are dying by suicide. The rates of Black young men attempting suicide, the rates of Black young girls being suicidal and attempting suicide, the rates are through the roof.
Yeah.
And we aren't talking about it, much less taking them to deal with the things that are driving them there.
Oof.
You know, so for me, my baby's constantly got to go.
That
Tell
is
me,
so
you tell
good.
me as the professional that they
Yeah.
don't need this.
Yeah.
And then they have to exhibit to me that they know how to ask when they feel like they do. Otherwise, they stay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they stay.
I think that would you've just given people permission with that series
Come
that you just
on.
gave.
Come on.
You just gave people the permission slip they need to wait a minute. I need to acknowledge that there is something
Come
that is
on.
not right here. There
Come
is
on.
something that needs to be addressed.
Come
And I
on.
need to, if I have the opportunity before my child is 14 years
Come
old,
on.
before something sets in and becomes a permanent thing in their
Listen.
life, I have a chance to do something about it.
And understand that what is happening with your child is not a blemish or a blight or a testament on your parenting.
Whew.
That is so necessary
Yeah.
because so much of our ego and our pride is attached to it that it's not my child. It's the neighbor's child. It's my sister's child. It's the child down the street. It's that my child didn't get this in our house. My child got that from the classmate in there. It is not a blight on you for your child to be trying to figure out how to navigate the world and survive. And sometimes when we're trying to figure out how to survive, we don't choose the healthiest way.
Yeah.
We choose the easiest way. We choose the default way. We choose what we see other people do. And if it works, then we just continue to do it. And so we don't recognize that we're not necessarily well. Right? If I have a broken leg as a kid and nobody takes me to the doctor, I'm going to try to figure out how to be okay. So I might try to wrap it in a towel. I might try to hop on it. I might try to limp on it. And eventually, if nobody still takes me to go get that treated, the bone is going to heal. It's just not going to heal 100% correctly. So I will still be able to operate. I'll just have limited functionality.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with our mental wellness as well. When we get wounded or broken emotionally in certain places, we heal. We just heal in unhealthy ways that cause us to lose our functionality. So if you want your children to be 100% of themselves, if you want to be restored to as close to 100% of yourself as possible, you have to allow yourself to heal well. And sometimes we have to be re-broken or re-injured or reopened up in order to have some corrective alignment happen, some corrective rehabilitative structure. You know, I like to say sometimes we're emotional surgeons. That's what we do. We are emotional doctors. We are fixing your emotions. We are fixing your wellness. And sometimes that requires you to be reopened up, to be cleaned out, to be irrigated, to be restitched back up, to be rehabilitated, to have time for the healing to happen, so then you get back to your full range
Yeah.
of motion. And for so many people, it is learning themselves for the first time because they don't remember a time when they've ever been this well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
impact. When you go, I don't even know this version of me.
Yeah.
My family don't even know this version. My
Exactly.
friends don't.
Yeah.
Listen, I
Yeah.
got to leave some of them
Yeah.
alone because me,
Yeah.
this well doesn't work with them
Yeah.
that unwell.
Absolutely.
Right. That's where we get into some
Yeah.
of the loneliness too.
Oh my God. Elevation requires some
Ooh,
separation.
come on.
And
Everybody can't go and don't want to go.
they don't. And I remember even starting on my healing journey and journaling and really becoming okay with my emotions because of
Yeah.
course I had to learn that my emotions are okay.
Yes.
Like it's okay to cry.
Yes.
It's okay to get mad.
Feeling.
It's okay to
Come on,
feel.
come on.
And so even going through that, I think that was that moment that people start to look at you different. Like, okay, well, who the hell do you think you
Yeah.
are now?
Because what gives you the right to
Yeah.
be feeling all
Yeah.
that? What
Yeah.
gives you the right
Yeah.
to acknowledge
Yeah.
being offended? What gives you the right to acknowledge being hurt? What gives you the right to dream big? What gives you the right to think you can actually have some things when we're over here struggling?
Yeah.
What gives you the right?
Yeah.
You need to come back into this way of thinking like how we've always done.
Yeah.
You need to not be able to see other people's side. You need to not be able to forgive. You need to be on my team. You need
Yeah.
to be loyal to us. You need to do it the way that we've been doing it,
Yeah.
not even realizing that the way we've been doing it sometimes is rooted in 2 and 3 generations back of lessons for worlds that no longer exist and won't exist when we get there. But you don't need to be teaching your children that. You need to be teaching your children this. Oh, raise them the way that you raised me, knowing that you raised me that way because your parents were raised by their parents.
Yeah.
So raise my children the way their great-great-grandparents had to survive. But that world no longer exists. Right? It can be really, really traumatizing for people to recognize how to come into the present and respond using your own emotions as the tool to guide you.
Yeah.
Especially if nobody's ever taught you how to do it or do it well and you've never seen it modeled, it just all feels so foreign. So we revert back to what we know, which is self-medicating and staying asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, staying asleep at the wheel. What is that? I think for so many of us, we want relationships, and I'm sure a lot of people come
Yes.
to your office.
I love love. That's
the,
my favorite
The
thing.
sanctuary. They come to the
Yes,
sanctuary.
you know. Okay,
Yeah, they
yeah.
come to the sanctuary to lay their burdens down.
Come on.
And
Give 'em to
often
me. Give
they
'em to me.
want relationship.
Yeah, we
And
all
they
want
yeah,
relationship.
and they want them to, they want to walk into a healthy relationship.
Yes, but
What's
so
the first
unhealthy.
thing?
You
Yeah.
got to heal yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that every single thing you're doing in your life is relationship. I like to help put it in context for folks because literally relationship by definition is just how one thing interacts with another. And so in order to understand relationship, you have to start with you. What is my relationship with you?
Yeah.
What is my relationship with my money? What is my relationship with my food? What is my relationship with my kids, my coworker? So when you can understand that everything is how one thing is interacting with another, then you can start to ask yourself, what is the way that you interact with the thing that you want to be in the most intimate form of relationship with? And a lot of that is the core beliefs that mess people up that they don't even know that they have.
Like
And
what?
if it's about, let's see, I want to be in relationship with a man, but I don't trust men. Men aren't really faithful. I ain't never seen a man really be faithful. All men cheat.
Yeah.
Let me stay out of his phone because I don't really want to go looking because you know what they say. Don't go looking unless you want to find something.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you weren't doing anything to begin with, it don't matter how many times I go looking, there's nothing that's going to be there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the trauma either in this relationship that's causing me to be suspicious or what I've experienced before that causes me not to trust now. Right? It's like, how do we begin to understand what we truly believe about who and what we're trying to be in relationships
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
That's important. And so it's like, how do you increase your awareness so then you can also increase your presence? And how do you recognize that there's a difference between compatibility and chemistry? Most of us are choosing people that we have high chemistry with,
Yeah.
but we're not compatible to be in long-term relationships with, and then we're devastated.
Yeah.
So we don't understand. I'm dating to find my husband. He was just dating to do something fun. Why isn't this thing working?
Yeah.
Well, you weren't compatible to begin with in your
Yeah.
search. Or somebody who says, I'm not looking for love, but I'm not going to run from it unless, if I find it, then cool. You don't want to have to convince anybody that you're the one. You want somebody who's at the same place,
Yeah.
looking with the same intention as you. But we've never learned how to do relationship. We don't know how to work through relationship. We don't know how to communicate effectively. We don't know how to show up vulnerably. We don't even want to show up vulnerably.
Yeah.
But I want you to give me an experience, not recognizing it's my job to give myself that experience and choose somebody who wants the same experience as me.
Yeah.
So that we're creating that together.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't know how to do it.
Yeah. We don't know how to do it. Are there some things that when people come into your practice that when we talk about unlearning some things about relationships, right? So maybe we've believed for such a long time that relationships are supposed to look like this.
Yeah.
They're supposed to function like this.
Yeah.
My parents have been married for 40 plus years and this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so what is that unlearning process of how to create something healthy for you and not something that you've just seen?
So I think a huge part of the problem, and it's funny because I never thought about it until you were just saying it like that. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That a huge part of the problem is that we learn about relationships backwards. And so then we are trying to do relationships like what happened in the generation before us, trying to do that in the now, and that no longer exists. So we may try to date like our parents try to date like their parents. So you will have men nowadays, for example, who say, I want a woman like my grandma. Right. My grandma who used to keep the house all day, manage the kids,
she
do all
cooked
the
every day, neck bones and collard greens and cornbread every day.
From scratch. From scratch. Don't bring a box, right? But here we are in 2024 where that's not realistic because it takes two of you to work outside of the home. So you might want a woman like your grandma, but you don't want to be a man like your grandpa.
Oh, wait a minute. Right? Don't let me run. Don't let me run, Dr. Spirits. Don't let me take off with my tambourine.
But it's true. It's true. And we don't see ourselves, right? We see the other person. So then when a woman comes at you and says, okay, so are you willing to have this house? Are you willing to pay these bills? He's like, now, hold on now, because I can't do that.
50-50.
And that's the reality. Right. 50-50. And you keep your account and I'm going to keep mine and the two shall never meet. And don't worry about what I got in this account and don't worry where I'm spending it, right?
Yeah.
So that's not how our grandparents did it.
Yeah.
That's not how it worked. And the world that we live in now doesn't work that way. And then we get into our parents' generation, right? The baby boomers. A lot of them got divorced. And a lot of them also got the message from their grandparents, the silent generation, where the women said, listen, don't you be like me. Don't you get caught up. Don't you have no bunch of babies, so you got to stay with this man. Don't you let him pull the purse strings so that he's making the money and you got to stay stuck here. You go get your education. You go get your financial independence. Don't have any children. And so here we are now. All caught up because we don't know what to think and what to believe. We want relationships that have the quantity, the years on them, but we don't understand the poor quality that came in those relationships, or worse, we do. So now we no longer believe in love. So now we're choosing different dynamics in the relationship that are also affecting our children because our children are watching us do relationship. And it's all just off kilter. And we don't understand. So even now, when you have women, people don't recognize. Most women go, oh my gosh, I didn't get married in my 20s. I didn't get married in my 30s. It's over for me. But the data tells us that more women are getting married in their late 40s for the first time
Come on,
ever.
Church.
Come
it
on.
gets greater later.
Come on. Bevy said it now.
Bevy
Come on,
said it.
Sister B.
Come on. Listen, Auntie Bev let y'all know.
And the data is telling us that, right? But as a society, we don't recognize it. So we are looking at old messaging. If I haven't gotten married in my 20s, if I haven't had children before my 30s, I'm old. But that is not what is real. So now the younger folks will look at what we're going through now and try to date according to all the norms, all the information, all the data. So instead of us being present to say, let's talk about the life that I want to experience, and to hell with what everybody else is doing. Let me and you come into relationship, and whatever works for how we rock is what we're going to do. If more people could recognize that their relationship is a footprint or a fingerprint or a snowflake, you don't have to look to the left to see what they're doing. You don't have to look to the right to see what they're doing. But what do you want to experience? How do you want it to rock? And what are you going to have to do to create that? That is where the success is. You know, I love to say for my husband and I, it is like the sleepover with my best friend every night. And that's what I want. And that is the energy that we come with, right? And like, if you knew that your best friend was going to sleep over this weekend, how would you feel all week long? What would you do? What would you say? I'm going to buy this, or we're going to do this, and then we're going to eat this, right? If you thought about that as that's the kind of relationship that makes you happy, then what energy would you put in that? How would you nurture it? How would you move? How would you think? And also, what would it give you in return in your quality of life, in your quality of experiences, in the quality of your health, physically and mentally? So that is what we have to teach people. What does relationship look like for you? Not the one you're in, not the one you're not in, but the one you desire to be in. And then what is it going to take to deliver you there and nurture and keep you there for a lifetime? That's how we get there.
Doc, this is so good. I feel like I'm going to put it out there. She's coming back, y'all. She's coming back. She is our resident.
I love this.
She's our resident therapist now here at Vault Empowers Talk. She is the resident therapist. I'm already dubbing it.
Let's go. Let's go.
So as we close out this interview, one word that you are committed to in this season of your life.
Peace. Peace. You know, everything is swirling, and I give this to my clients also. I tell them, what is the word that you want to strive to experience? Because the word is not a word, it's a verb, it's an experience. And so for me, it's peace. And that sometimes means being firmly rooted and grounded in the eye of the storm. You know, when everything is swirling all around you, it's chaos and it's madness and it's just swirling. And by the way, my family, we literally survived a tornado back in 2021.
Wow.
So I literally got to see what it felt like to be in the eye of a storm. And when you can stay grounded in that place and learn how to move with the storms, but no matter what, you just find that center, find that place, and know that everything is either taking you towards what you desire or away, and it becomes really easy. If it's taking you away, do less of that. If it's taking you towards it, do more of it. So get really centered. What do you want to experience? And then give that to yourself. Do not betray that for anybody. If they care enough about you, they will move in ways that allow you to experience more of it. If they take that from you or they threaten that, that is a threat to your survival. And your own self-preservation has always got to come first. Right? Even the plane, they tell you when that oxygen, come on, put on yours first. So it's like, what is the word that literally equates to your survival? And how do you stay firmly rooted in that and the quest for that and the maintenance of that constantly? So for me, that is peace.
Peace in the eye of the storm. Dr. Spears, you are the real deal. Holyfield. Come on now. That was good. I love having this conversation. You know, peace in the eye of the storm. You guys, this is another good one at Vault Empowers Talks. We do not scratch the surface. We dive deep here. And this was a good one. Thank you, Dr. Spear, for joining me. You guys, be sure to share this with somebody. Be sure to like, comment, but be sure to subscribe before you leave here and share this with somebody you know who needs to up their mental health game in this season of their life. Until next time, I'm your girl, Brandy Harvey. Eat well, give a damn, move your body every single day. Peace.